There are things a man can never forgive himself for. Mine began with a dream. My wife dreamed of a house she had never visited, a crying infant she had never met, and a family who swore they had seen her before. At first, I laughed. By the time I stopped laughing, the police were already asking questions. To understand how we arrived at that dark shore, we must go back. Back to Tokyo, to the spring of 1923. If I had only recognized the warning signs back then, if I had listened instead of explaining them away, none of what followed would have happened. I truly believed I was merely watching my wife recover from a lingering illness. I was so incredibly wrong. That fateful summer arrived under a sky stained the color of diluted crimson ink. The sunlight was oppressive, heavy. It settled over the valley like a persistent fever. Fresh green leaves shimmered beyond the garden walls, while the last pale cherry blossoms drifted through the stagnant air like dying butterflies. Everything in the waking world should have felt alive. Instead, the world seemed utterly exhausted. Even the trees moved strangely. Their branches twisted in the wind like the frantic gestures of madmen. The yellow dust from the tram junction clung to every coat, every collar, every face. Looking back now, I cannot help but wonder whether the unease had already begun there, whether something invisible had already attached itself to us. Kyoko had returned from the hospital shortly before noon. The doctor had found nothing conclusive, or perhaps nothing he was willing to name. She spent most of that afternoon in bed. The pale blue electric lamp cast a cold light across her face. She kept turning from one side to the other, searching for cool places beneath the blankets. She complained that every part of her body felt feverish, heavy, as though the warmth itself were pressing her into the mattress. I remember trying to comfort her during supper. I spoke with confidence. Confidence born from ignorance. Next month the school closes for holiday. I'll take you to the seaside. We'll stay for a month. The sea air will make you well again. Her eyes softened. For the first time in weeks, she almost smiled. She remembered the coast where we had spent our first summer as husband and wife, the small pines growing from the dunes, the endless blue horizon, the evening wind carrying the scent of salt across the sand. She longed to return. I believed that longing was hope. I never imagined it was something else. Ever since the miscarriage 2 years earlier, she had never truly recovered. The headaches, the dizzy spells, the endless exhaustion. Some days she wondered if she was pregnant again. Even the physician suspected it. He asked quietly, "Have you felt any nausea?" Her monthly cycle had been delayed once more, but no answer ever came. Only uncertainty. Only waiting. The maid had dropped another dish. An ordinary household accident, or so I thought, outside. The wind carried a distant sound, perhaps a passing train, perhaps nothing at all. Yet Kyoko would later tell me that the noise seemed to merge with a feeling she could not describe, a dark fog inside her mind, one she could neither escape nor explain. That evening she said very little. I returned upstairs to my cramped study, where government translation work waited for me beneath the dim light of my desk. She never came to see me. The staircase was steep. Calling for me meant summoning the maid first. Even that had become too much effort. I assumed she had fallen asleep, if only she had, because that was the night. The dreams began, and before long, I would no longer know where her dreams ended, and reality began. Then, something changed. She never remembered closing her eyes, only that the room quietly dissolved around her. The suffocating warmth was gone. In its place came a cool, immaculate wind, not the stale air of our house, but the breath of the sea. Moonlight filtered through the needles of tall pines. Each branch stirred softly overhead. The dark trunks stood like silent sentinels, disappearing into the night. At her feet stretched sand as white as flour, so soft that even her footsteps made no sound. Only the sea spoke, slowly, patiently. Its waves rolled against the shore as though repeating a memory older than time itself. She walked without purpose, without fear, without questioning where she was going. It was as though the path had already been chosen for her. She descended a gentle sand dune. At its foot flowed a narrow stream. A simple wooden bridge crossed the water. Beyond it, a pine-covered hill lay bathed in pale moonlight. Scattered among the trees stood 2 or 3 quiet villas, dark, still, almost expectant. She crossed the bridge at an unhurried pace. An overwhelming weariness settled over her. Not the exhaustion of illness, but the strange certainty that she had finally arrived somewhere she was meant to be. Near the entrance stood the nearest house. A broad path of white sand led toward a gate fashioned from old ship planks, bordered by woven bamboo fencing. The gate was closed. Yet somehow, it did not feel closed at all. She stepped forward, without knocking, without calling out, without even wondering whether anyone lived inside. If only I had understood what that meant. Dreams do not ask permission. Neither do the places that wish to keep you. The gate offered no resistance, she would later tell me. It felt no different than returning to our own home. The front door was closed, yet when she reached for it, it yielded without a sound. Inside was a modest entrance hall, small, still, almost painfully ordinary. She lowered herself onto the wooden floor, stretching her tired legs as though she had walked for miles. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing seemed threatening. Only one detail held her attention. A framed portrait hung upon the wall opposite her. It depicted an elderly Western gentleman with flowing white hair and a great white beard. She studied the face for a long moment. Then a thought crossed her mind. It looks like the very same portrait she had once seen among my books. Even now, I cannot explain why that detail unsettles me more than the others. Dreams invent impossible things. They rarely pause to recreate the forgotten portrait hanging in a scholar's study. Then, a baby cried. Just once. Soft, fragile, alive. Kyoko looked toward the sound almost instinctively.
Oh, there's a baby here.
Whatever caution she might once have possessed simply vanished. The crying drew her forward. She slid open the paper door to her right. A quiet sitting room lay beyond. Past it stretched a narrow veranda washed in pale moonlight. The crying came again. Closer now. She followed it. Step after a silent step, until she reached another paper door. She opened it. Inside, a young family slept peacefully. 2 futons lay side by side. A husband and wife rested with their heads toward the doorway. The young mother had fallen asleep while nursing her child. The infant remained wrapped inside a brightly colored quilt, nestled safely against her. It was such an ordinary scene, so gentle, so completely untouched by fear. Looking back, I think that was the cruelest part. Nothing in that room belonged inside a nightmare, yet the nightmare had already entered. Kyoko crouched beside the mother's pillow. Carefully, almost reverently, she leaned closer, hoping for a better look at the child. Then, without warning, the mother's eyes opened. They locked onto Kyoko's face for a heartbeat. Neither woman moved. Then every trace of sleep vanished. The young mother's expression collapsed into pure terror. It was not the startled look of someone awakened unexpectedly. It was the look of a person staring directly at something that should not exist, something that had crossed the threshold without invitation. Her voice trembled uncontrollably.
Please don't be frightened. I only came to see the baby.
The room fell silent. The young woman stared at her, blinking once, then again, as though desperately trying to convince herself that the stranger before her was made of flesh, and not something that had wandered in from the darkness beyond the dunes. The young mother kept staring, as though she expected the figure before her to vanish if she looked long enough. It didn't. Her voice grew louder, more desperate. "Who are you? How did you get in here? Why have you come into our home while we're asleep?" Kyoko never raised her voice. She never became angry. That is what still unsettles me the most. She answered with complete sincerity, as though nothing about the situation were unusual.
I only came to see the baby.
The words should have been harmless. Instead, they seemed to terrify the young mother even more. She pulled the child closer without thinking. Her face hardened. Fear became indignation. "You came to see the baby? Who gave you permission to enter this house? This is outrageous. Leave. Immediately." The baby began to cry, but the mother barely noticed. Her attention never left the stranger kneeling beside her. Then she turned toward her sleeping husband. Her voice broke into a scream. "Wake up! Quickly! Something's wrong." The room exploded into motion. The husband jolted upright in confusion. For the briefest instant, everyone froze. Kyoko, the frightened mother, the bewildered husband, the crying infant. It was as though time itself had hesitated. Then the shock reached Kyoko. She had not expected anyone to wake. She had not expected anyone to see her. The room blurred. The faces dissolved into shadows. The voices became distant. As she later tried to describe it to me, it was as if the world had suddenly slipped away beneath her feet. And then, everything went dark. When Kyoko awoke, everything appeared ordinary. The breakfast table had already been set. The scent of wakame drifted gently from the miso soup, a smell I insisted upon every morning before leaving for the middle school where I taught in Hibiya. If only I had understood. Sometimes the most terrifying mornings begin with the quietest routines. She served breakfast as though nothing unusual had happened. No fear, no panic, only a strange, distracted silence. Then, without warning, she looked at me, almost casually.
I had the strangest experience last night.
I smiled. What happened? She spoke so naturally that I listened without the slightest concern.
I walked down the sand dunes again. There was a little river and a wooden bridge. Across it stood a few seaside houses. I was tired, so I entered one of them. The gate was made of old ship planks. Inside there was a small entrance hall, and hanging on the wall was a portrait. It looked like the writer whose books you once showed me.
I laughed quietly. So, it was a dream. She shook her head.
No, it didn't feel like one. I remember everything. The color of the pine trees, the sound of the sea, the shape of the house, everything.
Even now, I can still hear the certainty in her voice. Not confusion, not uncertainty, certainty. And that frightened me far more than if she had simply called it a nightmare. Still, I refused to believe it. It only seemed real because we'd been talking about the seaside yesterday evening, I told her. Dreams borrow pieces from the waking world. They always do. She lowered her eyes, then continued.
I heard a baby crying, so I went looking for it.
She described every room exactly as she had before. The dining room, the veranda, the sleeping couple, the infant wrapped snugly in blankets. Then her voice became quieter.
I leaned over to look at the baby. The woman woke up. She demanded to know who I was. I told her. I had only come to see the child. She became furious. She screamed for her husband. He leapt out of bed. And when he did, everything went black. That's when I woke up.
I smiled again, trying to reassure her, trying to reassure myself. It was only a dream, nothing more. Your health has been poor. The doctor was right. You need rest. Next month we'll go to the seaside. My translation work will be finished by then. We'll stay for a month. The sea air will do you good. I believed every word I said, because the alternative was impossible. After breakfast I finished my tea, collected my papers, and left for work. I remember glancing back once before stepping outside. Kyoko hadn't touched her breakfast. She sat alone before the small table, her elbow resting on its edge, staring into nothing, as though she were listening to someone calling from very far away. I wish I could tell you that what happened next never truly happened, that my wife remained at home, that she never returned to that impossible house. But memory has a cruel way of revealing the truth only after it is too late. While I spent the day believing she was resting, Kyoko was walking that lonely shore again. Two students passed one another, chatting as they walked. Their wooden sandals tapped against the packed sand. Beyond them, mist drifted over the narrow stream in torn white ribbons. Then she crossed the little bridge without hesitation, as though she already knew the way. The gate of weathered ship planks stood before her. It did not stop her, neither did the front door. It welcomed her. as though it had been waiting. She stepped into the entrance hall. The first thing she looked for was the portrait. It was still there, the white-haired foreigner, exactly where she remembered, exactly where no dream should have remembered it. Then I imagined something changed inside her. Not fear, determination. She whispered to herself.
Tonight, I will hold that baby.
She followed the same path, across the sitting room, along the wooden veranda, toward the bedroom. Everything was unchanged. The young mother slept beside the child. The infant lay wrapped tightly in its blanket. No more than 3 months old, small enough to resemble a porcelain doll. The husband's breathing echoed through the room. Heavy, wet, almost like the croaking of a giant frog. Kyoko stood over the cradle, watching, completely still. Then she murmured,
I wonder, is it a little boy or a little girl?
She could not resist. She reached out, slowly, carefully, both hands extended toward the sleeping child. Her fingertips touched the blanket. The mother's eyes snapped open. Instantly, both hands shot forward. They wrapped around Kyoko's wrist, like snakes striking prey. What are you doing? What are you doing? Kyoko tried to pull away. She couldn't. The woman's grip only tightened. Then she screamed. Wake up! Quick! It's the woman from last night. She's trying to take the baby. The mother lunged at her. She knocked Kyoko to the floor. Her fingers buried themselves in Kyoko's hair, pulling, tearing. Again she screamed. Wake up! She's come back for our baby! The husband exploded awake. Before Kyoko could escape, his hand closed around her throat. So, it's you? The one from last night? Kyoko struggled to breathe. The room spun. The mother's nails raked across her face, across her forehead. Pain, confusion, panic. The baby's cries filled the room. Louder, sharper, desperate. Then, everything dissolved into darkness. If only that had been the end. If only she had awakened then, none of what followed would ever have happened. The next morning, she woke up beside me. Or rather, I woke her. She was trembling. Her breathing was uneven. I remember placing my hand gently on her shoulder. Kyoko, what's wrong? Were you having another nightmare? She opened her eyes. The pale blue glow of the bedside lamp fell across her face. I noticed nothing unusual. No scratches, no bruises, no marks. But she reached for her neck immediately. Then her cheek, as though every touch sent pain through her. She looked at me with complete conviction.
It wasn't a dream. I went back. I tried to hold the baby. The woman grabbed my hair. She clawed at my face. Her husband woke up. He wrapped his hands around my throat.
Her voice shook, not with fear, with certainty. I laughed. God, I have hated myself for that laugh ever since. It was only a dream, I told her. When the body is exhausted, the mind creates horrors. She shook her head again.
No, my face still hurts. My neck still hurts. They hurt me.
She ran trembling fingers across her cheeks, searching for wounds only she could feel. Then she held her face toward me, almost pleading.
Look, isn't there something there?
I looked carefully. There was nothing. Nothing at all. I smiled, trying to comfort her. There aren't any marks. It was only a nightmare. If only reassurance had been enough. If only reason had still held any power. She lowered her hands, but something inside her did not let go. She whispered,
I went back to that house. I only wanted to hold the baby. They attacked me. I'm so angry. I wanted to take the baby away from her and throw it.
Then she said words I have never been able to forget, words that still wake me in the middle of the night.
I wanted to take the baby away from her and throw it.
I stared at her for only a moment, long enough to feel something cold settle inside me. But I buried the feeling. I blamed her illness, her miscarriage, her weakness, her fever, anything except the truth. I simply answered, if you were healthy, you wouldn't dream of such things. That night, the wind returned. Clouds raced across the face of the moon. The pines groaned against the darkness. Dry needles tore loose from their branches and blew across the sand. Kyoko walked toward the dunes once more, as though someone or something were calling her by name. She descended the familiar slope. The little wooden bridge waited ahead, just as before. But this time, someone was crossing toward her. An old villager, bareheaded, silent. Kyoko stepped aside into the grass, allowing him to pass. He stopped, turned, and stared directly into her face, not with surprise, not with curiosity, but with the expression of a man who had recognized someone who should not have been there. Without saying a single word, he continued on toward the dunes. Kyoko crossed the bridge. Her heartbeat quickened. She no longer paused to admire the portrait. She no longer looked through the sitting room. She already knew where she was going. Straight to the bedroom. Straight to the child. This time, only the baby was there. The mother was gone. If only someone, anyone, had stopped her before she crossed that bridge for the last time. The bedroom was empty. At least, almost. The young mother was gone. Only the baby remained, sleeping peacefully, wrapped tightly in its blanket, completely unaware of the nightmare standing beside it. Kyoko looked toward the doorway.
She must have stepped away. What luck.
Without another thought, she lifted the child into her arms. The baby never woke. Its tiny breaths remained calm. The only other sound in the room was the husband's heavy snoring, slow, rhythmic, unaware. Then something changed inside Kyoko. Later, when I tried to understand her state of mind, I imagined this was the moment the reason finally slipped away. She held the sleeping infant close and thought,
Now I have the advantage. As long as I hold the child, she cannot defeat me.
It was no longer affection, no longer mere curiosity. It had become an obsession. Then, the mother appeared in the doorway. Her voice shattered the silence. Wake up! Please, wake up. She's here again. Kyoko looked back and smiled. A cold, unfamiliar smile.
Tonight, I've won. I have your precious child.
The husband jolted awake. What do you want from us? What have we ever done to you? The young mother stood frozen. Her voice broke with desperation. Kyoko answered calmly.
I don't hate you. I simply came because I love this baby.
The words, even now, send a chill through me. The husband stepped forward. You have no right to be here. Give us our child. The mother reached out with trembling hands. Please, give my baby back. Kyoko rose to her feet, still holding the infant. She shook her head.
No, no matter what happens, I'm not letting go.
The husband grabbed her shoulder. The mother reached desperately for the child. Kyoko twisted away.
No.
She broke free and hurried into the next room. The terrified couple followed close behind. The moment the struggle began, everything unraveled. Kyoko forced her way into the sitting room. Under the hanging lamp, a half-finished kimono rested neatly beside a small sewing box. Nothing about the room seemed unusual. Nothing, except what was about to happen. Kyoko's eyes fell upon a pair of flower shears. Their lacquered red handles caught the light. She picked them up, slowly. The blades opened with a soft metallic scrape. She lifted them toward the child in her arms. The couple froze in the doorway. Then Kyoko spoke. Her voice was calm, almost gentle.
If you try to stop me, I'll do it.
The mother's scream shattered the silence. She threw herself forward, trying to seize Kyoko's wrist. Hands collided, the shears slipped. Then, nothing. No image has ever remained with me. Only sound. One cry, so full of grief that it seemed to tear through the walls themselves. Then, silence. A silence so complete, it has echoed inside me for the rest of my life. Kyoko gasped. Her eyes flew open. She was back beside me, in our own bed. I was holding her shoulders. She stared wildly around the room, as though searching for something only she could see. Her breathing became frantic.
The baby.
She whispered.
The baby.
I looked around the room. There was nothing except the dim blue light and the frightened woman in my arms. There is no baby, I told her. What are you talking about? She kept searching every corner of the room. Her eyes refused to believe what they saw. Fear had become stronger than reality. I spoke more firmly this time. It was only a dream. Your body is exhausted, that's all. Then I made the decision, the one I believed would solve everything. We're going to see Dr. Ishikawa. He'll examine you. This isn't your fault. Your nerves have simply become overwhelmed. Slowly, her breathing steadied. The terror in her eyes faded, just a little. She looked at me and asked quietly,
Was it really only a dream?
I nodded. Yes, when nervous exhaustion grows worse, the mind creates terrible dreams. I believed those words. I repeated them, again and again, until I almost convinced myself. But there is one thing I know now. Some nightmares do not end when we wake. Sometimes they are only beginning. I told myself the sea would save her, that a month away from the city, away from the fever, away from those impossible dreams, would return my wife to me. If only I had understood what was waiting for us. The school holidays finally arrived. Just as I had promised, I took Kyoko to the coast. It was the summer of 1923. Heavy, oppressive, the kind of heat that pressed against your lungs until even breathing felt like work. We left the train and hired a rickshaw man to carry our trunk. He told us the seaside inn was a long ride, but only a short walk if we cut across the dunes. So we carried our own baskets and walked. Not a single breeze moved. The pine needles stood perfectly still. Even the sea seemed to be holding its breath. We passed through the pine grove, then descended a sandy hill covered with young pines. At the bottom, a narrow stream crossed our path. A small wooden bridge stretched over it. The instant Kyoko saw it, she stopped. I heard her voice behind me, quiet, uneasy.
Somehow, I know this place.
I glanced back and smiled. I thought she was simply remembering a childhood trip. You must have come here years ago, I said. She slowly shook her head.
No, I've never been here. My parents never traveled. They wouldn't have brought me.
Her answer should have ended the conversation. Instead, it unsettled me. Because she wasn't guessing. She sounded certain. We crossed the bridge together. Reeds swayed lazily in the shallow water below. Beyond it, a broad road covered with pale sand, and beyond that, a low hill filled with pine trees. 3 villas stood quietly among them, exactly where she had described them weeks before. The rickshaw man adjusted the trunk on his shoulder and pointed ahead. "We circle around by road," he said. "Add another 10 blocks or more." His voice faded into the background. Because Kyoko wasn't listening anymore. Neither was I. She was staring, not at the trees, not on the road, at the very first house beside the bridge. Color drained from her face. Then she grabbed my sleeve. Hard.
Yajima,
Her voice trembled.
you remember the dream I told you about?
I turned toward her. "What is it?" She raised a shaking hand, pointing directly at the house. Then she whispered the words that still haunt me.
This is it. This is the house.
Kyoko's hand tightened around my arm. Her voice was barely more than a whisper.
The house. It's the one from my dream.
I looked where she was pointing. There it stood. A quiet house. Its weathered gate was built from old ship planks. A bamboo fence framed the entrance. The gate was shut, exactly as she had described it. I forced a laugh, the kind of laugh a man makes when he is trying to convince himself that's impossible. She never looked away.
No, it's the same. The hill, the bridge, every detail. That's why it felt familiar.
I searched for some ordinary explanation. Anything. "The place looks abandoned," I said. "If it's empty, perhaps we could rent it." Those words still echo inside my head. If only I had walked away. The rickshaw man finally caught up with us, the trunk balanced across his shoulder. I pointed toward the house. "Is that place vacant?" He nodded. "It is." Would the owner rent it for a month? The man's expression changed. His voice dropped. "There haven't been any tenants since last month. They say a family from Tokyo stayed there. And something terrible happened. A strange woman came into the house. And the baby died." The world seemed to fall silent. I turned toward Kyoko. Her face had lost every trace of color. She looked as though she already knew the rest. And at that moment, I remembered every nightmare she had described to me. Every room, every doorway, every terrified cry. I had dismissed them all. I looked back at the empty house. For the first time, I no longer felt like I was looking at an ordinary building. It felt as though it had been waiting for us. "We'll go to the inn first," I said quietly. "We're not staying in a place with a story like that." It sounded sensible, reasonable, but the reason was already slipping away. We continued toward the shore without another word. An old man approached from the opposite direction. As we passed, he stopped. He stared directly at Kyoko, not casually, not with curiosity, with recognition, a long, silent recognition. Then his eyes shifted to the rickshaw man. The two exchanged a few quiet words behind us. I kept walking. I didn't bother asking what they were discussing. Another mistake. A minute later, the rickshaw man hurried to catch us. "Sir, the old gentleman. He's the owner of that house." "I see." That was all I said. But the rickshaw man wasn't finished. He looked at Kyoko, respectfully, carefully. "Ma'am, have you ever visited this village before? The owner says he's certain he's seen you somewhere." Kyoko didn't answer. She couldn't. So I answered for her. "No, this is our first visit. If he recognizes her, he must have seen someone who looked like her in Tokyo." The words left my mouth easily. I wanted to believe them. But as we walked away, I could feel the old man's eyes following us. Even now, I sometimes wonder, was he mistaken? Or had he already seen my wife before we ever arrived? We took a room on the second floor of a small seaside inn. The windows overlooked the shore. The sea breeze drifted inside. It should have brought peace. Instead, the room felt colder than the house we had left behind. Kyoko sat perfectly still. Her hands rested in her lap. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. Her face was pale. Not merely frightened. Empty. As though some part of her had remained behind at that house. I tried to sound calm. To sound like a husband who still believed the world made sense. "Go and change your clothes. You'll feel better. This is nothing more than a coincidence. Your dreams, and that old story, they happen to resemble each other. Nothing more." She didn't move. Not even a nod. I changed into the inn's robe while the tea the maid had brought slowly cooled beside me. I tried again. "Come on. Changing clothes might help clear your mind." Still, nothing. Only silence. A knock came at the door. The inn's manager stepped inside. He held a business card between his fingers. "Sir, a visitor wishes to speak with you." I accepted the card. One glance. And my stomach tightened. Police. The police? What could they possibly want with us? The manager offered an awkward smile. "They've been visiting many people lately. Quite a nuisance, really. Shall I show him in?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, please." The manager bowed. "I truly am sorry." He turned toward the door. Then, Kyoko screamed. Not a cry of surprise, not fear. A scream of absolute terror. Before I could react, she was already running. She burst into the hallway. I chased after her, just as she climbed onto the railing. I grabbed her, pulled her back with everything I had. "What are you doing?" She fought against my arms, wildly, desperately. I looked toward the garden below, and then I saw her. A woman, running between the red pine trees. She looked exactly like Kyoko. The same face, the same figure, the same clothes. For one impossible instant, It was as though my wife was both in my arms and fleeing across the garden. I stared. Then I looked back at Kyoko, still struggling against me, still screaming. I looked toward the garden again. The woman was gone. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. Only the wind moving through the pines. I never found an explanation for what I saw that afternoon. Even now, I cannot swear whether I witnessed a ghost, a hallucination, or something far worse. But from that moment on, I stopped telling myself it was only her illness, because I had seen it too. The next morning, we abandoned the trip. There was nothing left to hope for, nothing left to investigate, only escape. On the train back to Tokyo, I sat beside my wife, or rather, what remained of her. She leaned against me without speaking, without looking out the window, without recognizing the world passing beyond the glass. I held her trembling body all the way home, and for the first time, I understood something that filled me with a terror no words can truly describe. Whatever had reached my wife had not stayed behind at the seaside,